removable lithium-ion battery. It does have a built-in tester. This one is showing me that it's low right now, but it would tell me the status and how much battery life was left in this by pressing the button. But if we had an extended power outage, this battery can be swapped out. You pull the dead one out, put a fresh one in. It doesn't require that you replace the entire unit. And then we can also send out a charger, so you can be charging your depleted battery, a single bay charger or a 6-bay charger. And then if the power outage is all day, maybe you're just cycling through batteries, you know.
So the idea is to have lots of spare batteries. A location loses power, you send out a bunch of batteries, and nothing is lost during the transition time of unplugging one and plugging the next one in.
Now, if you don't have AC power and you're pulling the battery, the system will go down, of course.
So you have to reboot it.
But it is non-volatile memory, so you're not going to lose any data, but it would require a reboot, yes.
The ballot on demand printer, if you had it out at a location just for your ADA component, and you had pre-printed ballots for the for the precincts, and you were running low on a precinct's ballot, can you use that to print? Can you use the printer to print, let's say, 200 more ballots?
You could print, in a pinch, you could use the accessible ballot printer to print ballots, but it would be one at a time because it's tied to a voting session. But yes, we have seen where if you were running out of ballots, it's a process that it's going to take longer than the ballot on demand designed machine, a few seconds longer. But again, in a pinch, while you're waiting, you can print ballots. It's going to take closer to 45 seconds probably to print a ballot, just because you're going to have to enter an access code and get that ballot.
Yeah, so it's like basically 2 separate things. I wouldn't do what I just thought.
It wouldn't.
No. Unless you'd have to have that, just the ballot on the unit.
Yeah, so that's a good transition to talking about the accessible device. The accessible device is connected to a commercial off-the-shelf printer. It is using blank ballot stock. So it is just blank ballot stock that you could use, like I said, in a pinch to print ballots on demand if you were running low.
Okay.
But it is designed for a one session at a time. The voter who needs it comes in, starts their session, prints their ballot. The nice thing about this is that their ballot that is marked, it makes the selections for them based on the selections they've used on the screen or with the wheel. Their ballot looks identical to every other ballot. So you're not going to get some disjointed thing. So some of the other systems out there, a voter who, let's just imagine you only have one voter who needed to use the ADA device. If their ballot looks different when it's in the box, you've immediately blown their privacy and you know how they voted. So our design here is that the ballot looks identical to every other ballot in the polling location.
The paper you use, is it vendor specific? Can you use any vendor's paper?
It's non-proprietary paper. We do give you the specifications for it. It's 28 pound, 92 brightness, short grain versus long grain paper.
So do you have a number of vendors that print your paper for your product?
I'm sure you could find paper of that specifications from hundreds of different places. The only thing that you get if you get our paper is an official ballot watermark that's inside. But
Do you manufacture paper?
we do have our paper and we do sell it, but you're not required to get the paper from us. We highly recommend that you follow the specifications though for toner adhesion, breaking paper fibers when you fold it, things like that. But yeah, full disclosure, all that, you can get it wherever you want.
To that end, Hamilton County prints a lot of absentee and some of their pre-printed here. I believe it's MCR.
Mhm.
So they're a certified printer for Hart, established in the state of.
Do they buy the stock from you directly, or do they get it from somewhere else? Do you know?
No, they use their own stock. They do not buy paper prints.
Yes.
In regards to durability and like shelf life, obviously with elections and the locking of a screen, how often do you break those screens? How often do they need to be replaced? And with the locking of a mechanism that locks that screen into place, is it easy to manipulate that switch so the switch becomes, there's a short in the switch or something like that along the shelf life of that product?
Yeah, so those are some very specific things that I don't know that I have what our repair rate for those specific things is, so I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. The system as a whole though is, like we said, it's new, the supply chain is young, it's, we project it to go 15, 20 years into the future. The devices are, drop tested, things like that. Of course, like any machine, if it rolls out of the back of the truck, it's probably gonna be damaged to some extent. But they're pretty durable. They've got, ruggedized cases that they come in. Again, drop testing, things like that. But we do have different warranty options and things like that. But one of the main advantages, like Lawrence said, is this system was the first election it was used in was November 2015 in Virginia. And then 2016, we saw a lot of adoption of this system. So it means it's a scanner technology that's essentially 3.5 years old versus scanners that are over 10 years old, and the supply chain of that is going to start running thin. So it's kind of like the new car metaphor. You wouldn't buy a 2007 model car and call it new just because it had 0 miles on it. It's old technology, it just hasn't been used. It's a new build of it. This is going to be a new build, of course, 0 miles, but just a few years old as opposed to a decade old.
With the 88 printer, like we usually use a 17-inch ballot. Does that require then using the bypass tray?
No, it goes out the back, so we can do all the way up to 8.5 by 20 with an extender tray that comes with the printer when you get it from us.
How do you get that printer out there? Like, is there a case that it goes in? What's the difficulty of setting up that printer for a poll worker is going to be?
So it's got a power cord,
Okay.
and then the connector cable that I talked about, the cable that comes from us that we physically altered
Right.
and made different. Those are the only two things that need to be plugged in. It is a dry toner, so it's going to last on the shelf. The printer weighs less than 30 pounds. Nothing in our system weighs over 30 pounds. And we have different options for how you can transport it. We've got some options for a corrugated plastic container, form fit molds inside with 2 handles, or a wheeled case that you could wheel it in with. When it came time for us to design this, there was a lot of back and forth pros and cons of using something commercial off the shelf or trying to integrate something. And I think one of the really powerful statements is the printer is probably the first thing to go, to be honest. That's going to be the first thing that breaks. And if that happens, in this case, you've got a $100s problem, not a $1,000s problem if we had integrated that printer into the device. And it just gives you more flexibility, and it also allows us to print, again, a full ballot that looks identical to every other ballot. But I would encourage you to talk to other counties. This has been in 11 states. It's not an untested method. So I know that some of the other counties that have implemented this system probably have a lot better advice on the ways that they deliver it, the way that they maintain it, and things like that. So we're always learning from our customers in that way. Okay, so let's talk about a voter who needs to use the accessible device, because that does look a little different for them. They're going to check in the same way. Of course, they're then going to say that they need to use the accessible device. You can see right now it says enter your access code. It is ready to be used, but it's not just open for somebody to walk up to. So they got to go through the process. And in the same way where I would hand most voters a paper ballot, I need to give this voter what we call an access code. It's a 5-digit randomly generated access code that is generated from the machine. And we think that's important because it's not a separate thing that you need to have, a separate laptop or an encoder card or something that's going to print the header paper. It's built into the machine. So the difference is that instead of handing that voter the ballot, the poll worker needs to come over to the device. There's a button on the back, which we call the poll worker button. They press that button, they enter their poll worker code, and then at this point they're going to create the ballot access code and choose the voter's precinct. If it was a 1-precinct polling place, of course it's automatically going to default to that precinct. But once I've selected the voter's precinct, hit OK, and I print the code, and you'll see that it's going to print on the thermal printer here that 5-digit code. At this point, as a poll worker, I can walk away and let the voter enter this and do it completely privately. There is headphones for voters who may be blind or visually impaired, and then also an accessible, handicap accessible jack here for sip and puff devices, jelly switches, things like that that can be used to navigate through the ballot. If the voter wanted help with this part, I can still help them enter their code and not encroach on their privacy of how they're marking the ballot, because the very first thing that you're going to see is about your ballot and options to either begin voting get instructions, or view the contests that they're about to see on the ballot. So a voter can get instructions or jump right in, and at this point, it's a pretty standard touchscreen interface where I can make my selection, I can deselect it. It will not allow me to overvote because when I move it, it's gonna automatically move the choice. To enter a write-in, I press that and it brings up the keypad where I can type in Abe, and now it lists the write-in that I've selected as the option there. I navigate through the ballot by hitting the next button down at the bottom. Currently it says skip, so I'm skipping this contest right now, but as soon as I make a selection, it will say next and it changes colors, so it's some sort of, it's a little bit of visual indicators that you've made your choice and you're ready to move on. It also has dynamic instructions off to the left. So if it was a vote for 3, it would tell you, you have 3 selections left. When you hit 1, it's now 2, it's now 1, and 0 choices left. Little things that kind of just help the voter through that process. If I was using the headphones, I've got audio options on screen, including the ability to turn the screen off. So this voter, if a voter is blind, obviously they're not responding to the screen, they're responding to the audio. They can scroll in and go directly to the audio options and do volume, speed, or reset. And they can go in to the screen options and turn the screen off. And this is a nice feature for that voter who is using the audio. Now they know no one is looking over their shoulder, seeing how they're voting, and it's purely an audio ballot at this point.